Hi, I am Nivara. My fiancé didn't just betray me by inviting my sister and mother, who abandoned me at 13 and forged my name to steal my future to our wedding without my consent. He let them hijack my day, placing them above me at the head table, only for me to uncover their deceit and unleash a fiery reckoning that turned their scripted celebration into a public exposé they'll never recover from. Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening and where from? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone, because what you're about to hear, it's not a love story. It's a reclaiming. And they never saw what came next. I was sitting by the wide window at Eldora's place just outside Savannah, Georgia, the early afternoon light stretching across the wooden floor like a quiet promise. The wedding planner had just finished triple-checking the seating chart and left me with a box of last-minute details. My mind should have been on centerpieces and timelines, but something in my gut kept tugging at me. "You're being set up," a voice whispered in my head, sharp and unyielding, quiet but persistent, like a draft slipping in under a locked door. I told myself it was just nerves. 3 weeks until the wedding, it was normal to feel something. Cassian had been acting odd lately, not cold but distant, distracted maybe. He brushed it off every time I asked. "Just work stuff, babe, we're almost there." I believed him. I wanted to, but even the vendors were behind schedule now. The florist hadn't confirmed. The string quartet hadn't returned a call. I tried to shake it off until I reached for the printed guest list. It was folded neatly in the top binder. Nothing unusual, just names and table numbers. Then I saw it. Brielle Moreau. Leora Cade. I froze. No, I blinked and looked again. Same. Same spelling. Same. Ink. I hadn't seen those names together in over 12 years. Not since the night I left home with a cracked phone and bruised dignity. Not since the hospital. Not since Leora turned her back and Brielle watched like I was something on a lab slide. Something worth dissecting but never saving. They're invading my life again, I thought, my heart pounding with dread. I don't know how long I sat there. My throat dried up like cotton. The heat of the room suddenly felt unbearable. I picked up the list and walked straight into the kitchen, where Cassian was filling a glass of water, acting like this day was just like any other. "Cassian," I said too calmly. "Why are their names on the list?" He turned startled. "Whose?" I held up the page. "My sister and Leora." He looked at me for a long second. I could almost see the script forming in his head. I thought maybe it was time for healing, for moving forward. Without asking me, he sighed. "Look, Nivara, it's been a long time. Families change, people change. Not them." My voice cracked, sharp but low. "And you knew that? You betrayed me," I accused, my words slicing through his excuses. "I just thought—" I didn't wait for him to finish. I left the room. The sunlight was harsher now, too yellow, too exposed. I walked down the hallway, past the swatches of wedding colors we'd once excitedly picked out, and found the nearest chair to sink into. My hands trembled, but my jaw clenched so tight I could hear the pressure in my ears. I pulled out my phone and called the only person who ever understood. Eldora, my anchor, my safe place. Voicemail. Her calm voice played through, cheerful and unaware. "Hey, it's Eldie. Leave a note unless you're bringing cookies." I didn't leave a message. Instead, I stared at the wall and remembered the last time Leora had made me cry in public, a charity gala. I was 20. She called me the mistake that made her give up Milan. People laughed, thinking she was witty. I wasn't laughing. "You humiliated me," I recalled. Her cruelty a wound that never healed. I swallowed hard. That woman, the one who said I was a regret with legs, was now listed as a VIP guest on my wedding invite. Evening fell quietly, like a curtain pulled halfway. At 7, the stylist team arrived for the final fitting. I'd forgotten they were scheduled. They came in with soft voices and even softer smiles, armed with fabrics and pins, clipboards and cameras. "Hi, we're here for the rehearsal shoot," one of them chirped. "You must be one of the bridesmaids." I blinked. "Excuse me?" The woman pointed at my dress. "Oh, it's just the bride is wearing blush-toned ivory according to the lookbook. Yours is a bit cream." My custom dress, silk, minimalist, hand-picked. I looked down at it, like I didn't recognize it anymore. Who submitted the lookbook? I asked quietly. She checked her iPad. It says Brielle Moreau through Cassian's account. She said she was helping you coordinate. You stole my vision, I thought. Brielle's interference a deliberate sabotage. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Thanks, I said softly. You can go now. I'll handle the rest. They left awkwardly, muttering apologies. I walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and opened the old oak drawer. Inside, wrapped in tissue, was the handkerchief Eldora embroidered for me when I was 16. It read, N, for when you forget who you are. I held it like a compass. That night, I didn't sleep, but I stared at the RSVP card Cassian had ordered last month, my name misspelled in silver foil, and something inside me cracked. The next morning, I held that RSVP card like it was evidence, because it was. The name printed on the envelope wasn't mine. Not really. Nivora. One letter off, but it hit like a slap, the kind that says, you're not important enough for us to check. Inside, the seating chart confirmed it. Table 10. Not near family, not near Cassian, not even near the people I'd known for years. I was placed next to the restrooms, tucked into a corner like an afterthought. You've relegated me to the shadows, I realized. Their placement a public humiliation, my fingers pressed into the paper so tightly the corner curled. Still, I didn't say a word. I folded the chart, set it aside, and went upstairs to change. The coordinator had scheduled a walkthrough of Cassian's family estate that afternoon, and apparently I was still expected to play the part of bride. The drive to the estate took just under 45 minutes. I didn't remember the roads being that long or that dusty, but I also didn't remember feeling like a stranger headed to her own wedding. When I pulled up to the front gate, the place looked exactly like every Southern bridal Pinterest board had promised. White stone, jasmine bushes, vintage lanterns swinging in the soft breeze. But to me, it looked like a set someone else had designed, and I was being asked to pretend it was mine. Inside, Cassian's mother was already with the planner, hovering over swatches and timelines. I walked past them and into the main hallway, following the distant hum of conversation. That's when I saw them. The gallery photos. The hallway walls had been transformed into a showcase of blown-up engagement shots and carefully posed family moments. The kind you'd expect from a wedding this size, but not a single one featured just me and Cassian. Every photo had someone else squeezed into it. Brielle, Leora, even his cousin Silva showed up in one, but me, I was background. In one frame, Leora stood behind me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder, her smile soft and fake, like she was comforting me. The caption read, Bridging Generations. That never happened. That photo was staged last month. You're rewriting my love story, I thought, their manipulation a theft of my narrative. And in that moment, staring at it under soft yellow light, I felt it down to my spine. They were rewriting my story, turning my pain into decor, my wedding into their stage. I turned away before anyone could see the tears building behind my eyes. Outside, the sun had dipped low, casting a muted orange over the lawn. The scent of magnolia hung thick in the air, a familiar perfume I couldn't place until later. We gathered under the tent where the design coordinator laid out the final mood board for the reception. This, she beamed, is our cohesive vision. She handed me a clipboard like I was a guest on a TV show, not the woman footing 65% of the bill. Color palette, gold, sage and lavender. Signature scent, magnolia and sandalwood. Theme, sisterhood and restoration. I flipped through the pages slowly, each decision etched into glossy paper. Every choice made without me. Cassian's mother turned to me. Isn't it just perfect? Brielle said. These tones flatter everyone. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I felt something shifting inside me like stone cracking under pressure. I thought back to the contracts I'd signed, the meetings I'd paid for, the deposits I'd covered, while Cassian said, "Don't worry, babe, you're so good at handling this stuff." Now I understood why. I was never supposed to be the centerpiece. I was the infrastructure. I left the table with a quiet, "Excuse me," walked across the grass and down the path that led to the guest cottages. No one followed. "You've erased my role," I thought, their exclusion a deliberate act of control. Later that evening, back home, I opened my laptop to review the vendor files. I didn't know what I was looking for. Not exactly, but I felt drawn to the budget tab. Something in me needed proof that I wasn't imagining all of this, that I wasn't overreacting. Line 52 caught my eye. Main photo layout, approved by BM. I stared at the initials. Brielle Moreau, the woman who once told me, "You're only angry because no one ever picked you first." She'd picked everything. She'd designed everything. She was center stage, and I was being erased. I closed the laptop quietly, then walked to the hallway closet. I reached behind the coats, behind the boxes of winter boots I never wore in Georgia, and pulled out one box I hadn't touched in years. Inside was the beginning of something they'd forgotten I had. Memory and the ability to burn. I carried the box from the closet like it held something radioactive. It was lighter than I remembered. Maybe because I was heavier with the knowing. I placed it on the edge of my bed, hesitated, then walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. Not because I was thirsty. I just wasn't ready yet. There's a kind of fear that doesn't make you scream. It makes you stall. Back in the bedroom, I sat cross-legged, lit the candle on my nightstand, and stared at the pine twine wrapped around the pine box. The knot had dried tight over the years. I pulled gently. It loosened with a soft pop. The smell hit me first. Sandalwood and something faintly floral. Maybe memory itself has a scent. Inside were neatly stacked folders, yellowing paper, and 2 letters tied together with blue embroidery thread. Eldora's handwriting peeked out from one. I set those aside for last. I didn't need comfort right now. I needed clarity. The first folder was labeled in black ink, "Intake, Summer 2006. I didn't need to open it to know what it was, but I did anyway. A mental health intake form, my name, birth date, and next to temporary guardian, the loopy performative signature of Leora Cade. I remembered that summer all too well. The heat wave, the silence, and the way Leora dropped me off at the psychiatric facility like she was returning a rental. She told the staff I was acting out for attention after my overdose. She left me there for 4 weeks. I was 16. They called it a resilience-building opportunity. Later, she would use that exact phrase on a podcast. "She's doing so well now," she had said to her audience, her voice soft and angelic. "She learned early that pain can teach you strength." You branded my pain as progress, I thought, her words a twisted manipulation of my suffering. I hadn't learned that. I just learned how to survive her. The pages trembled in my hands, and I realized it wasn't just from memory. It was anger, fresh and wild and pulsing. Beneath that file was a thinner envelope, sealed with a faded blue sticker. I opened it carefully. What I found stopped everything. A consent form dated 2008, my name typed at the top, the title, "Reallocation of Educational Trust Funds." I blinked. My signature was there. Except it wasn't. It looked like mine, close practiced, but I had never signed this. I had never even seen this. The date listed April 15th, 2008. I was 18. That spring, I remember going to the bursar's office at school, trying to refill my meal card. They told me my account had been redirected. Family hardship, they said, funds reallocated, with guardian consent. I didn't understand then. I cried in the parking lot, thinking it was a glitch. But it wasn't. It was Leora. She stole my college money and forged my name to do it. "You robbed my future," I seethed, the forged signature a betrayal etched in ink. My body went cold and then hot. I fanned the papers out across the bed. My name used like a signature on someone else's lies, like I had agreed to disappear. For a moment, I couldn't move. Every woman in that wedding gallery, Leora, Brielle, Cashin's mother, had spoken louder about my life than I ever had. Every time I tried to claim something, dignity, space, a seat at a table, I was told I was being difficult, dramatic. Now I knew they weren't ignoring me. They were editing me. I sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by papers like fallen leaves. A quiet ache built in my throat, and somewhere underneath it, rage curled up like a sleeping animal, waiting to wake. I reached for the 2 letters from Eldora. The first one was written in 2010, a week after I left for college. It was short, a reminder to buy a new toothbrush and never let boys do my laundry. The second was different, older. It was folded twice, the edges worn. Baby girl, I wish I could wrap you up and carry you out of this whole mess. But I know you'll do something stronger. You'll walk out on your own. You're not broken. They just needed to believe you were easier to leave behind. My chest cracked open at that line. Not broken, just easier to leave. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The tears were too old. Instead, I reached over to my desk, grabbed a blue folder, and slowly slid the forged document inside. Then I pulled out a Sharpie and labeled the folder in capital letters. Truth. Not for drama, not for revenge, just to remember who I was before they rewrote me. I'm reclaiming my story, I vowed, the folder a testament to my resilience. My phone buzzed nearby, a notification from the wedding photographer reminding me to confirm final layout choices. I stared at the screen. I opened a draft email, typed 3 words, used none of it, then deleted them. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But this silence inside me? It wasn't passive anymore. It was the sound of planning. I stood, placed the folder on my desk, and whispered into the room, like it might carry. You're not walking me down the aisle. You're walking me to war. I left the blue folder on my desk, turned off the lamp, and went to bed without brushing my teeth. That's how I knew I was done pretending, even for myself. Sleep came in short bursts, broken by images. Leora's signature beside mine. Brielle in red silk, smiling for cameras. Cassian nodding like everything was fine. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. If they wanted to choreograph my silence, I'd give them a performance they couldn't script. Brunch was hosted at Cassian's family estate, out on the patio beneath the pergola, where vines crawled up the columns like they were listening in. The weather was warm, but not enough to excuse the chill in the air when I arrived. I wore a pressed linen dress the color of mist, and a quiet expression I'd practiced in the mirror. Darling, mimosas, Cassian's mother offered, already 3 flutes deep. I smiled. Sure. Heavy on the orange juice, please. I spotted his old first. She was seated in the center of the table like a sunbeam, pastel green dress fluttering just slightly in the breeze. Leora was to her left, pouring syrup over waffles like a grandmother who didn't once have her own child committed. I walked slowly, deliberately, and sat down at the opposite end of the table. Morning, sunshine, Brielle chirped. You look rested. I am, I replied. Nothing like truth to clear the sinuses. You're nervous, I observed, her forced cheer a crack in her facade. The small talk bubbled. Wedding weekend updates. Flower deliveries, who's bringing what dish to the Thursday welcome dinner. I waited, listening for a cue. Then I leaned in slightly, mimosa in hand, and asked with honey in my voice, Did you ever hear back from the florist about the peonies? Brielle's smile twitched just slightly. Oh, yes, she said quickly. They confirmed delivery on Thursday morning. You know how finicky peonies can be with heat. You're lying, I thought, her response confirming her betrayal. I sipped my drink, nodding like her lie didn't just confirm everything. I had never mentioned peonies to anyone but Eldora and my private wedding vision board, not even Cassian, not in texts, not in vendor calls. Someone had access, and I had my guess who gave it. I let the moment pass pretending to be absorbed in the fruit salad, but inside, something settled into place. A gear clicked. After the plates were cleared, I offered to help bring dishes inside, a small favor. No one refused. Cassian's mom had left her iPad on the kitchen counter, open to a spreadsheet. I wasn't looking for it, but once I saw the tab, Family Priority Seating, I tapped once, just enough to open it fully. It was color-coded names, table numbers, roles, visibility rating. My name was grayed out. Gray, not purple for family, not teal for wedding party. Gray next to it. Not ideal for centerpiece positioning. I stared at it under Leora's name. VIP Plus. Intro Speaker Brielle. Next Gen Speaker Potential. I closed the tab and set the iPad down without a sound. You've planned my erasure, I realized. Their hierarchy a deliberate demotion. Later that afternoon, back at our townhouse, Cassian was adjusting the AC. I sat on the edge of the couch, waiting for him to finish pretending everything was normal. "Did you share my private wedding board with Brielle?" I asked calmly. He turned, hesitated. "She just wanted to help. You've been overwhelmed and she said she could step in where needed. You weren't answering every message." "You gave her my voice," I said. "You handed her my story and called it helpful. She's your sister, Navarra. No, she's your project and I'm your placeholder." "You've betrayed my trust," I accused, his silence a confirmation of his complicity. He didn't argue. He didn't even deny it. That hurt worse than any fight. I stood, walked to my home office and powered up the printer. I printed 2 sheets. One was a copy of the payment log from the venue. The other, my finalized contracts with the florist, baker, and photographer. I stapled them together and highlighted the lines that mattered. At the top, in bold, property ownership and wedding vendor contracts paid in full by Navarra Cade. They wanted me to be invisible. Good, because no one sees the quiet girl until she stands up. I zipped my purse shut with a quiet finality. If they thought I would keep playing the part of the grateful bride while they rewrote me out of my own wedding, well, they hadn't been paying attention. The sky outside was softening into amber as I pulled into the gravel drive of the venue. The final rehearsal dinner was already in motion. Flutes of sparkling Chardonnay catching the light like bait. I stepped out of the car, heels crunching underfoot, and adjusted the strap of my dark sapphire dress. It wasn't the soft blush gown I had once chosen with such care. That gown was long gone. Leora greeted me at the door with an open-armed smile, the kind that photographers eat up. Her perfume hit me before she did. "Oh, sweetheart," she cooed. "That blue really works for you. Very forgiving." I smiled without teeth. "Thanks. And you look almost unchanged." "Your mask is slipping," I thought, her facade a brittle veneer. Her laugh was brittle, but she turned quickly to someone else before she could reply. Inside, the ballroom was already buzzing. Laughter bounced off the walls and small talk filled the air like static. I made my way to my assigned seat toward the edge of the room, just beside the serving staff's staging area. Someone had even left a stack of folded napkins behind my chair. Brielle swept in half an hour late, and she did it in cream. It wasn't just cream. It was ivory silk with crystal-trimmed cuffs and a neckline I recognized instantly. It was nearly identical to the sketch I had submitted to my dressmaker weeks ago. A bridesmaid at the adjacent table whispered, "I thought Navarra was going to wear something like that." Another replied, chuckling softly, "Maybe she changed it so she wouldn't clash. Or maybe she figured cream's too hopeful." I didn't react. I didn't correct them. I simply sipped my water, listening, watching. "You've stolen my identity," I thought, her dress a blatant theft of my vision. As the dinner moved into the rehearsal portion, we were handed printed seating orders and walkthrough scripts. Cassian's uncle stood by the podium like a cruise director calling names. Matriarch of Honor, Leora Cade, followed by Maid of Honor, Brielle Moreau. I scanned down. Navarra Cade, row 4. Walk in after grandparent. Acknowledgement. My name had been bumped again. When it was my turn to practice the walk down the aisle, I did it in silence. No one noticed my pace had slowed. No one turned, not even Cassian, who was helping his cousin test the mic volume at the altar. After the rehearsal, I excused myself and headed for the bridal suite. The air inside was cooler, untouched. I shut the door behind me and turned the lock with care. There was no one to impress here. No audience. I faced the mirror above the vanity. The woman staring back had shoulders pulled too straight, eyes too still. "You've already survived worse," I said out loud. Don't let them unwrite you. I opened my purse and pulled out the folded contract, the one marked with my name on every invoice line, every payment. Then I folded it again, smaller this time, tight enough to fit in the lining of my clutch. When I returned to the ballroom, the dessert platters had been cleared. Someone had lit candles. The whole room looked like it had been curated for a magazine feature on family bliss. Brielle stood to make a toast. I just want to say how grateful I am, she began, glass raised. To be part of this weekend, this family, this restoration. I didn't interrupt her. I didn't clap, but I looked at her long and steady. She faltered for just a beat, then continued, tone thinner now. When the toast ended and the guests resumed their chatter, I walked quietly to the exit, thanked the servers, and left without fanfare. By the time I reached home, the moon was high. I poured myself a glass of water, opened the laptop, and logged into the shared wedding account. My hands didn't shake. I'll transfer funds one by one. Every leftover deposit, every line item tagged Nivara. Then one email, a single sentence sent to the venue director. Please remove all Cade family members from front table access. I signed it, closed my computer, and let the quiet settle like armor. I'm taking back my power, I declared, the email a quiet rebellion against their control. They didn't realize I'd been taking notes. Every slight, every lie, every omission, and by morning I had already started rewriting the ending. I sat at the dining table with a second cup of coffee going cold beside my laptop. On the screen, transfer confirmations lined up like dominoes. Vendor after vendor, invoice after invoice. My name wasn't just on the checks. It was on the foundation, the fabric, the photographer's retainer, the catering deposit. I moved it all out of the joint account Cassian had access to and into my separate business account, the one even he didn't know existed, the one Eldora had helped me open when I was 24 and rebuilding from scratch. One last click, funds moved, paper trail complete. Let them pay for the fantasy they built, I whispered to the quiet morning air. I didn't cancel the wedding. That would be too obvious, too dramatic. No, I simply erased myself from the web of bills, receipts, and contracts, every trace of my contribution surgically removed. The florist still had orders, the band would still show up, but I wouldn't be footing the tab anymore. Let Leora negotiate a new deal if she wanted centerpieces tall enough to block faces and music loud enough to drown out regret. By midday, I was gathering my keys when the phone rang. Unknown number, Savannah area code. Miss Cade, a calm voice asked. This is Mira Langston. I'm calling on behalf of your late Aunt Eldora. I didn't sit. I didn't move. She left behind a revocable trust in your name. She instructed that it only be disclosed if certain patterns in the Cade family re-emerged. I exhaled slowly, and I guess those patterns showed up. She knew they would. The woman said she just didn't know when. It wasn't the money that hit me, it was the recognition. Someone had seen me, not for what I pretended to be, but for what I was trying to survive. Thank you, I said, the words nearly catching. She also left a letter. We'll courier it over. Eldora believed in me, I thought, her trust a beacon in my darkness. By the time the sun shifted past its highest point, I had changed clothes and driven downtown. The tea shop was tucked between a florist and a boutique bakery, too perfect for how this was about to go. Cassian was already there, thumbing through his phone, a matcha latte beside him. He didn't even look up when I sat down. You're not answering calls, he said. I've had other priorities, he huffed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Leora and Brielle are doing their best. You're the one acting like the victim here. Because I'm tired of playing the ghost, I replied, setting my purse down gently. He didn't respond. I took off the ring, gold vintage cut, chosen with Eldora, not him, and placed it on the blue ceramic saucer in front of him. If being closed off means surviving this circus, I'll take it. No, I said, my voice steady. You chose them. That's fine. But you don't get to keep the version of me you invented. You've lost me, I declared, the ring a symbol of his betrayal. I stood, walked past the host, out into the warm savanna breeze. Back home, the late afternoon light spilled across the living room. I poured a glass of water, took off my shoes, and walked barefoot across the hardwood floor to my office. The blue folder sat where I'd left it, on top of the bookshelf, tucked behind an old poetry anthology. I opened it. Inside a copy of the forged trust transfer, Leora's handwritten notes from the hospital admission, the seating chart where I had been grayed out, and my vendor contracts now void of my name. It was all there. My silence documented. I pulled up my email, addressed a message to Leora, Brielle, and Cassian. Subject line: "No, I'm not coming, body, but you should still show up. I'm not done yet." No punctuation, no signature. I hit send. Then I called the venue. The receptionist recognized my name before I finished the first sentence. "I'd like to speak with the director," I said privately, "about a possible change in the use of the ballroom for Friday." "Of course, Miss Cade. I'll let him know you're on your way." I ended the call. No tears, no shaking, just silence. The kind that knows exactly what it's about to become. They thought I was withdrawing, but I was preparing the stage. I let the day pass without a word, let the calls go to voicemail, let the chatter unfold around a version of me that had already gone quiet. In truth, I was never absent. I was just waiting for the moment they'd least expect me. By 6:30 p.m. the rehearsal had begun without me. Cassian's mother arrived early, fussing over table numbers and crystal placement. Leora adjusted her pearls in the reflection of a champagne bucket. Brielle, radiant in something that looked suspiciously like a debutante gown, whispered directions to the wedding coordinator as if she were the host of a charity gala. And yet not a single person asked where I was. Not one pause, not one text. The coordinator handed out copies of the updated timeline and seating charts. Everything had shifted again, my name removed from every visible cue, tucked into the shadows. But 7:03 p.m. changed everything. I stepped into the venue alone, dressed in black from shoulder to heel. Not mourning, not hiding, owning. Heels clicked against the marble as heads turned. A hush, the kind that sucks the oxygen out of a room, swept through the ballroom. I walked past the center aisle, past the floral arch Brielle had insisted on, and approached the front, where the venue director stood adjusting linen samples. Without a word, I handed him a sealed cream envelope. He opened it, eyes widened, then he nodded and turned to the rest of the staff. "Effective immediately," he announced. "All authority for this event reverts to Miss Navarra Cade." Chairs shifted, utensils clinked. Brielle's voice cracked as she stepped forward. "This isn't your wedding anymore." I met her gaze, calm, still colder than she expected. "I agree," I replied. "It's not a wedding. It's my stage now. I'm rewriting the script," I declared, my voice a blade cutting through their illusions. Gasps echoed. I didn't flinch. I turned to the vendors lined up near the back, their clipboards clutched like shields. "All changes submitted by Leora Cade or Brielle Moreau are nullified. You've received updated instructions from me filed through verified channels." The florist, mouth open, fumbled for her iPad. The seating team began to whisper among themselves, scanning the newly printed lists. I watched as Leora stood, her smile gone brittle. Cassian broke the silence. "What the hell are you doing?" I faced him like I would a stranger on the street, someone I may have known once but no longer did. "I'm taking back what I paid for, what I built. What you let them dismantle." His jaw worked to form something, anything, but no words came. He looked smaller than I remembered, quieter, like someone finally seeing the silence he used to win was now louder than him. I didn't wait for more. I turned to the room. I wasn't looking for an audience, but I gave them one final line anyway. "You all thought I'd stay quiet because I did for years. You thought politeness was agreement. That silence meant approval. It didn't. It meant I was watching. And now, I'm done watching." I turned on my heel, and as I walked past the DJ booth, I paused. "Play something for Eldora," I said. She liked Miles Davis. The saxophone filled the hall behind me as I stepped outside. The air was thick with Georgia heat, the sun beginning its descent behind the hills, but it felt cooler now, lighter. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Inside, I knew panic had replaced pretense, chaos now where calculation once reigned. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation. I needed space, and I had just claimed it publicly, legally, completely. They thought I had walked away, but I had one last curtain to pull. I waited until the reception was halfway through, long enough for them to believe they'd won. I knew the rhythm of the event because I'd once designed it, down to the minute. Cocktail hour, then dinner, vows already exchanged, laughter beginning to bubble between bites of salmon fillet and over-poured wine. The ballroom looked as it should. Brielle glowed in her lace gown, raising her glass with Leora at the head table. Cassian wore a smug exhaustion, the kind of face a man wears when he believes a storm has passed. They didn't know what was coming. At precisely 8:12 p.m., as the server poured another round of champagne and the violinist transitioned into a soft jazz standard, the lights dimmed. A hush fell across the room. Then the projector on the far wall flickered to life. It started subtle frames from security footage, grainy but unmistakable. Leora caught in a midnight visit to my old storage unit rifling through boxes labeled Private NK. One clip faded into the next. Brielle seated across from Cassian at a quiet cafe signing documents. The camera angle was low, discreet, but the signatures were clear, one document titled Venue Adjustment Billing Authorization. The entire room turned. Forks paused mid-air. Then came the audio. A recorded conversation played next, the screen fading to black as the voices came through, crisp and legal, captured from the intercom system inside my home office. Brielle's voice, casual, venomous. She was always pathetic. I mean, if you let someone like that control the narrative, you deserve what you get. Cassian followed, his tone dismissive. Familiar. She'll roll over. She always does. You've exposed your own lies, I thought. The audio, a public unmasking of their deceit. Silence deep and hollow. You could hear the fabric of illusions tearing. No one moved. Even the waitstaff froze. And that's when I stepped in. I entered through the back door, calm as glass. I didn't wear a dress, just a tailored black jumpsuit and flats. No jewelry, no makeup, just me. Some turned immediately, others needed a second glance. Gasps began, followed by murmurs. One woman clapped, soft, hesitant, then stopped when no one joined her. I took the mic from the DJ with a polite nod. Evening, I said, my voice steady. I know I'm not on the program, but I won't keep you long. All eyes were on me. Even Brielle had stopped breathing. I just wanted to say thank you because for years I thought I was the weak one. The one who stayed too quiet, who kept swallowing disrespect like it was a vitamin. I looked toward the head table. Leora wouldn't meet my eyes. Cassian looked like he'd just remembered how to sweat. Brielle was stone, but every single betrayal taught me where the edge was. And now that I've found it, I know how to walk away without falling. I folded the mic cord carefully, handed it back to the DJ. I didn't cry. I didn't bow. I walked to the cake table, untouched and towering with sugar flowers that cost more than most people's rent. I reached into my purse, pulled out Eldora's embroidered handkerchief, and laid it next to the gold cake knife, a quiet symbol. She couldn't be here, but this moment was hers too. And then I turned and walked out. No applause, no gasps, just air so still it hurt. Outside, the valet line was empty. My attorney stood waiting by a black sedan. He held a folder tucked under one arm. "You're officially out," he said quietly. "All contracts voided. No legal or financial ties to any of them. It's clean." I looked at him. Perfect. I've severed their chains, I thought, the folder a confirmation of my freedom. I didn't glance back at the building. I didn't need to. Inside they'd be reeling, trying to control a narrative I no longer needed to participate in. I didn't win the wedding, I reclaimed my name. 3 weeks later, the air in my apartment felt different, still unburdened. The sharp scent of bergamot from the candle on the counter cut through the weight that had once settled into every corner of my life. My inbox had ballooned while I stayed offline, nearly 400 unread emails. I didn't open most of them. There were a few from vendors, a few from former co-workers, one from Cassian's college roommate with the subject line, "I had no idea," but the one that caught me off guard came from Leora. Subject, "Watched myself on screen. Body." I didn't realize how far we'd gone. "I'm sorry. That's not who I meant to be." There were no excuses, no signature flourish, just that. I stared at the screen for a moment longer than I meant to, then closed the laptop. I didn't reply. Some part of me, a part that used to ache for a mother's remorse, had expected to feel something. But I didn't. Not relief, not anger, not even satisfaction, just stillness. I poured a cup of green tea and walked it to the window. The morning sun pushed between the blinds, soft and amber. "Sorry," I whispered, "isn't the same as healing. Your words can't undo my scars," I thought. Her apology a hollow echo. I used to live for apologies. For the moment someone would admit they saw me, heard me, regretted their cruelty. But I've learned apologies confirm what happened. They don't undo it, and they certainly don't rebuild what was torched. Later that afternoon, I found myself in the laundry nook beside the kitchen. I pulled out the linen handkerchief, Eldora's, from where I'd placed it in the small pine box next to my grandfather's watch, and a faded photo of my childhood dog. The handkerchief still held the faint scent of jasmine and something floral I could never name. I filled the sink, let the water run cool, added a splash of gentle soap, and washed it by hand. As I rinsed, I whispered out loud, "Don't let their actions define your endings." I could hear Eldora say it low and warm like she used to. I dried the cloth flat on a linen towel, then took out my embroidery kit. Just one line, small and careful, stitched into the hem. I was always enough. That was it. That was my vow. A week later, I took a walk along a beach trail about 50 minutes from Savannah. I'd gone early, when the air was crisp and the tide hadn't fully turned. It was quiet save for the cawing of seagulls and the rhythmic crash of waves. I liked the sound of my shoes on the packed sand, firm forward. About 30 minutes into my walk, a woman jogged past with a Labrador. She glanced at me once, then slowed. She doubled back. "Sorry, are you Navarra Cade?" I blinked. "Yes." She took a step closer, holding the dog's leash like it was the only thing grounding her. "You don't know me, but I saw your clip. I left my family too. For similar reasons." Her voice cracked. She cleared it. "I just wanted to say thank you. You reminded me that walking away doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you finally understood the rules of the game." We stood there for 30 minutes, talking about nothing and everything. About how silence used to feel like shame, but now feels like power. About how some people confuse survival with selfishness. Before we parted, she smiled and said, "You didn't just take the mic that night. You gave it to people like me." When I got home, I lit one of Eldora's old records, a grainy vinyl of Ella Fitzgerald. I left the windows open, let the air flow. The linen handkerchief, now stitched and pressed, sat on my nightstand like a quiet witness to what had been reclaimed. No tears this time, just the steady rhythm of peace. They never saw what came next, because for once, I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me. I stepped onto my rooftop balcony, a soft wind lifting my hair, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't brace for impact. I breathed in the dusk. Then I whispered, "Sometimes standing alone at the altar of your life is the most sacred vow you'll ever make. I am Nivara, and I am whole," I murmured, my heart scarred but unbroken, carrying a truth they could never erase.